California Senator Kamala Harris is becoming a shining hope for the hard left in the 2020 presidential race. Yes, we are already talking about that. Isn't that fun? We're 2018. We're already in 2020. Oh, MP is shaking her head. It's fine. And she has liberal heart swooning even more after a report that her office, check this out, refused to even accept a courtesy phone call from the White House counsel's office about, of course, the Supreme Court pick. They wanted, of course, to discuss the Kavanaugh appointment. Her office is now denying that exact, precise characterization. But regardless, Senator Harris is on a relentless campaign to beef up her left-wing bona fides. And it doesn't hurt that she's reportedly a longtime favorite of former President Obama's. But can she reach Obama-like status with the left? Here to discuss is Congressman Sean Duffy and Austin Dove, an attorney who's run in many of the same legal circles as Senator Harris. Great to have you both on. All right, Kamala Harris, I see her as a likely 2020 frontrunner. I don't think it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. I don't think it's going to be Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden is not going to resurrect the Amtrak Express. That's not. Hillary is not going to be with the Scooby-Mobile. That's not going to happen. It's going to be someone like Kamala Harris. Now, Mr. Dove, you know Kamala Harris. What about her versus Barack Obama? Are they of the same epic, star-like quality for the Democrats?
Well, other than the fact that it's kind of trite to say just because of their ethnicity is similar in terms of being biracial, they're obviously both from the Democratic Party. They're very strong candidates, but they come from different beginnings, different origins. Kamala's background was steeped in local politics first, then headed the district attorney's office in a very large county in California, in San Francisco area, and then became the state attorney general before becoming a senator. Barack Obama's background was much more grassroots, working with organizations before he came on to the political stride and gained traction as a senator, and popularity through his speeches and so on, his connection to the voters. I think in any sense, we want a candidate who resonates with the voters, someone who can connect, someone who has a strong background in policy, in lawmaking, and understanding how to work across the table in different circles. And I think Kamala is that candidate.
Austin, you lost me at work across the table. You were doing really well until you got to that point. And by the way, I raised her as a woman who's a former prosecutor, very strong background in the law as Obama. I don't think it wasn't anything about her ethnicity. It's about the fact that she has. It's about the fact that she has a pedigree and is now trying to push a more her left-wing bona fides, much more so than just her days as a prosecutor, which I think are really interesting. But let's talk about what she said today about Brett Kavanaugh. Didn't sound like she was interested in working across the aisle. Let's watch.
Listen, if you are a young woman in America, or you care about a young woman in America, pay close attention to this nomination. Pay close attention, because Kavanaugh has made his purpose clear. It's about government taking on the decision about a woman and what she does with her body, instead of giving that woman and her family and her God the power to make the decision for herself.
Okay, so Brett Kavanaugh is essentially, we're supposed to believe, Sean Duffy, standing at a Planned Parenthood abortion clinic and barring women from going in. That's what the woman who is the 2020, I think, likely presidential contender.
Laura, first, set that aside. I mean, the thing that Kamala Harris is talking about protecting women's rights. How about protecting a woman when she's in the womb as an infant? Someone who's the most vulnerable in any stage of life when they're in the womb. And I know that's not the debate we're having here, but the fact that you're talking about women's rights and not protecting women's rights in the womb is outrageous. That aside, I think, and I think your intro is absolutely correct. When we talk about Kamala Harris and Barack Obama, it's not about race, it's not about their background, it's about who can be radical, who can be a leader of the resist movement, who can be the biggest hater of Donald Trump. Because if you're a Democrat, there's no ideas, there's no policy that you can run on, it's just being a resistor. Not only that, but I think Democrats are so engaged in what's happening right now because if you can't win at the ballot box, if you can't win votes in Congress, you have to look to the courts to have activist judges that will implement your progressive liberal socialist policies for you, because you can't do it in Congress and you can't win the hearts and minds of voters. And so you want to have the activist court initiative, and you also have, who's going to lead the resist movement. And Kamala, I think, fits both of those, or Senator Harris, I should say, fits both of those narratives.
Now, Austin, Austin, I remember the comment that Barack Obama made not too long ago about Kamala Harris, and this is why people still today say, of all the people out there, possible people running in 2020, she's probably his favorite. Let's watch.
I'm out in California. We're at a fundraiser. We're having a nice time. I happen to mention that Kamala Harris is the best-looking Attorney General in the country. As you might imagine, I got trouble when I got back home. Who knew Eric Holder was so sensitive?
Haha. Well, I thought we weren't supposed to objectify women who went to prestigious law schools. I'm just teasing. See, I think that kind of humor is fine, but the left, Obama can make those jokes, but conservatives can't. But Austin, what's your thought here? I mean, is she the Kamala Harris, the tough-nosed prosecutor, or is she the Kamala Harris, if you care about women, then you have to stop Brett Kavanaugh? Because to me, the latter is just not going to resonate with Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
Well, I don't think those two are mutually exclusive, nor do I think the fact that being an attractive woman sort of excludes you from being politically adept and capable of being a leader the way Kamala has demonstrated.
No, I'm talking about commenting on it. Do you comment on people's looks, Austin, while you're... I mean, you probably don't, because that's just not... You know, most of us in polite circles are told not to talk about that. I actually think it's funny. I think that's where Barack Obama is very charming, but the left never has a sense of humor on that. Conservatives do it, but that's beside the point. The point is Kamala Harris going to resonate with mainstream America, or is she going to stay in the resistance mode, fight Trump all the way?
Well, first of all, her comments about her thoughts about what's happening with women's rights coming up and certain swing decisions that will be taking place coming up, I think it's important for her to establish up front and say, this is where I stand on this. And I think that we're talking about a more than 40-year-old precedent that may be up on the block again. That's important for her to articulate that very clearly as well. As far as what her viewpoints are, can she gain traction, come outside of the resist mode as you've characterized it? I don't think that's where she really sits. I think as a former prosecutor, as you indicated at the outset, I think she's got strong chops there. I think she's got strong chops in lots of policy.
Lots of policy. You keep saying lots of policy. I'm not trying to be difficult here, but Sean, you're in Congress. What is the Democrats' agenda?
I'm talking about
what agenda do the Democrats have except stop Trump? They have zero agenda. So I'd love to hear the policy that Kamala Harris is advancing to get people more jobs, higher wages, et cetera, except raising the minimum wage in California. That's all she does.
It's single payer and a federal job for everybody.
But
we're talking about 2020. If you look at 2018, just one second. If you look at 2020 or 2018, you can't energize Democrats any more than they already are. This Supreme Court issue is going to energize their right, and actually, we're going to gain seats in the Senate. You talked about this. We actually might gain House seats because you're energizing the
really
right
optimistic,
because of what's happened in the Supreme Court.
All right, Austin, you can close it out real quick.
Well, I would beg to differ in your other guest-owned state, Wisconsin, that's shifting very much blue as a result of the very things that he's talking about right now. So those are up on the blocks.
Yeah, the pollsters said Hillary Clinton was going to win as well. The pollsters are wrong.
All right, guys, we're out of time. We're out of time, but I will say this. The Democrats at some point have to offer an affirmative agenda beyond single payer, abortion in every pot or whatever. I mean, I'm sorry, but we got to have more. We got to have more than just hate on Trump.
Those are real policies that have a real impact on the voters today, and they will matter.
Okay, well, I hope we hear a real substantive debate.
Democrats are reportedly rallying behind Senator Elizabeth Warren as their best bet to take on President Trump in 2020. But is she the candidate to rally the Rust Belt and convince blue-collar states to vote blue? Joining me now to debate is former presidential advisor to former Presidents Clinton and Obama, Dr. Susan Johnson Cook, and Media DC political analyst Ron Meyer. Thank you both for joining us. Susan, I'll start with you. Is she the person to take on President Trump?
I think Warren warrants strong consideration. I think she is definitely one of the ones. I mean, when we have a candidate, we rally around that candidate, and we make sure that not only but she has the support that she needs. She's strong. She's politically savvy. She's a senator. I think she's one of the ones who warrants strongest consideration.
Okay, Ron, do you agree?
Well, I'm sure I'd love to agree with her. From a Republican's perspective, we'd love to have Senator Warren be the nominee. I think she'd be even easier to beat than Secretary Clinton was. If you look at these Rust Belt states, you really think someone like Senator Warren, who has basically only been a college professor before serving the United States Senate and not passing any substantive legislation, will appeal to places like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania. I mean, I just don't see it happening. I don't see someone with her values appealing to that part of the population. If you look, she's really a democratic socialist, and she's not like the populist like Bernie Sanders is, where he sort of has this union appeal. And I just don't see how they're going to win over these Trump voters. And by the way, in these states that we're talking about, these Rust Belt states, we've seen 300,000 new manufacturing jobs in the country, and most of those in the states that we're talking about. So I have a really hard time believing Senator Warren is going to be able to go to those states and say, we need to get rid of President Trump, and what experience she has in the economy to get it back going when it is actually getting back going in many of these states.
All right, and you mentioned
totally
some of those.
disagree with you, Ron.
Hold on
I
one second.
totally disagree.
Let me just, let's pull up this map here because we want to break down some of these numbers, and then I'll let you respond here in just a second. Some of these states to watch in 2020 that did help tip the scale for President Trump, then candidate in 2016. You look at Michigan, President Trump had 47.3 of the votes compared to Hillary Clinton's 47%. In Wisconsin, Trump had 47.2 compared to Clinton's 46.5. And then Pennsylvania, Trump had 48.2 compared to Clinton's 47.5. So you're looking at a small margin of numbers there. Ultimately, though, people did go out and vote for President Trump. And you look at, to Ron's point, the economy and how well things are going right now. Dr. Johnson-Cook, do you really believe that some of those states would tip in favor of Democrats?
Well, totally. I mean, like you said, it's a small margin, so it can tip either way. But I think it's not just the economy people are looking at. People are looking at the separation of families. People are looking at all the things that are not going right with this nation. And I think Senator Warren is going to be front and center for that. So I disagree with Ron in terms of whether she can do it or not. She certainly can, and that's what strategy is about. That's what political strategy is about, that where we're weak, we surround her with strength. But she certainly has been strong and out front from the beginning. So I totally disagree with you, Ron.
Well, listen, Susan, I think that people on the coasts and maybe in the suburbs care about Trump's Twitter and some of these things and his personality and all that. The people in the Midwest, they don't care about that stuff, not nearly as much. They care about being employed again. You're seeing steel factories open up for the first time. You're seeing unemployment hitting record lows for almost every major demographic. And so I have a hard time believing that Senator Warren is to be able to go out there and make a case for anything. In fact, I think that if Senator Warren is the nominee, President Trump will be the first Republican to win in Minnesota for the last 50 years. If you look at the numbers in Minnesota, they're closing. He's doing rallies there. I'd put that as a state to watch. If they nominate someone like Elizabeth Warren, anyone from the coast, I think President Trump can even expand Republican margins in the Midwest.
Look, time will tell. Ron Meyer, Dr. Susan Johnson-Cook, we appreciate both of you joining us this morning.
Well, does Hillary Clinton think the third time could be a charm for 2020? In an op-ed, New York Post columnist and former Obama voter Michael Goodwin thinks she is definitely up to something.
He writes, with the Democratic Party locked in a battle between its far left wing and its far left wing, no single leader has emerged to unite it. Clinton is trying to play that role by being a mother hen to the fledgling activists drawn to politics by their hatred of Trump. There is no clear frontrunner for the nomination 18 months into Trump's presidency. Clinton remains the closest thing to an incumbent. Here to react, Democrat and former chief strategist for both Bill and Hillary Clinton's election campaigns, Mark Penn. Mark, good to have you with us.
Good morning.
What do you make of that, Hillary Clinton, 2020?
Well, I thought Goodwin's piece was a little bit more almost fantasy news. It didn't even qualify as fake news. I think he took some emails that are professionally written and tried to blow it up into a 2020 run. I think Hillary may not be done with public service. She could make a great Supreme Court justice. She might even be a Secretary of State again. I think she may be very interested in public service, but I don't think she's planning a secret run in 2020. I think she is going to remain relevant in issues and in politics, and she's made that clear.
Mark, you're right. I mean, a lot of professional emails are written with a lot of hyperbole to raise money, and we get them in our inbox all the time. So you can't draw too much from that necessarily. But is it completely outside the realm of possibility that as 2020 approaches and no other clear frontrunner emerges, that she could try to make the case, hey, the third time really is the charm. The voters are ready for me now?
Well, I think Goodwin dismisses what actually is happening when you look at the Democratic primary. When you look at the Democratic primary, Joe Biden has been rising. He's well over 30%. In the Harvard CAPS Harris poll that we did last month, he rose again, I think, into the mid-30s. He is a front runner. He is dismissed as too old, but he has just done a massive book tour. He is vibrant. He's been a VP. There is a front runner. He is it. He's not in the 40s like big front runners, but he is now head of the pack, and he's the kind of person Democrats are really looking for. When you get rid of all the fluff and the excitement and all the people playing to the left, he actually is much more in line with what Democratic primary voters are really looking for.
Do you think the Democratic voters are, or even leaders within the Democratic Party, are wanting more of the Clintons right now? I mean, we've seen Bill Clinton out and about promoting his book, getting into a bit of trouble talking about the Me Too movement and other things. Hillary Clinton lost the last election. Do you think that these two are what the Democratic Party are wanting, or behind closed doors are they saying we need to move on from this?
Well, look, there is a special place for the Clintons who made a tremendous contribution. Look, I work with both of them. They made a tremendous contribution to Democratic politics and to the country. So I don't think it's, do we want them? Do we not want them? I think the party's going to move forward. I don't think it's going to move backward. In an odd way, Biden is a move forward.
It's so interesting. Just what I was going to ask. Together. How is Biden the move forward? It's very interesting how this could unfold. Of course, everyone thought Jeb Bush was the front runner at this time 4 years ago as well. So anything can happen.
You never know with a multi-candidate field who really emerges this early. I'm just telling you that.
And clearly, never
Biden
too early to
becoming a
speculate,
consensus.
which we're doing this morning.
Mark Penn,
see you. Thank you for your time.